Ukrainian armor advances 23 kilometers in 12 hours. NATO tanks execute breakthrough operation. Russian doctrine couldn't stop. Saturday, 4:37 a.m. Eastern Sector. Ukrainian 3rd Mechanized Brigade moved into assault positions under darkness. 92 NATO tanks total. 48 Leopard 2A4 and 2A6 tanks from Germany and Poland. 26 American M1A1 Abrams. 18 British Challenger 2s. Supporting them were 74 Bradley and Marder infantry fighting vehicles, plus 36 M109 Paladin self-propelled howitzers. This wasn't probing attack, wasn't limited objective operation, was full-scale breakthrough attempt using best equipment NATO provided. Against Russian positions held by 35th Combined Arms Army, professional soldiers, well-equipped by Russian standards, dug into defensive belt that halted 2 previous Ukrainian attacks in this sector. Russian commanders were confident, had intelligence Ukrainian forces were exhausted, believed NATO equipment deliveries couldn't sustain major operations. We're about to learn how catastrophically wrong intelligence assessments were. Breakthrough sector was carefully chosen. Ukrainian intelligence identified weak point in Russian lines where 2 divisions met. Coordination between units was poor, communication was inadequate, artillery coverage had gaps. The seam between formations was vulnerability Ukrainian planners targeted specifically. NATO training emphasized finding and exploiting weak points rather than attacking strength. Ukrainian commanders absorbed that doctrine, applied it systematically. 8 weeks of preparation. Drone reconnaissance mapping every Russian position. HIMARS strikes degrading Russian artillery for 10 days prior. Electronic warfare identifying command posts. Intelligence fusion creating comprehensive picture of enemy dispositions. The preparation was meticulous, professional, exactly what NATO training programs taught. Artillery preparation began at 4:37 a.m. Not traditional Soviet-style mass bombardment, was precision strike campaign. M109 Paladins firing GPS-guided Excalibur rounds at specific Russian positions identified through intelligence preparation. 47 high-value targets, command posts, artillery batteries, air defense systems, communication nodes. Each target received 6 precision rounds, 282 rounds total destroying Russian command and control across breakthrough sector before ground assault began. HIMARS contributed 18 precision rockets, eliminating Russian reserves attempting to move toward threatened sector. The fires were surgical, devastating, complete before Russian commanders understood attack was beginning. Leopard 2 Battalion crossed line of departure at 5:14 a.m. 48 tanks in 2 waves. Advanced through morning darkness using thermal imaging. Russian forces couldn't match. First contact came at 1,800 meters. Russian T-80 tanks in prepared positions. Leopard gunners acquired targets through superior optics. Fire control computers calculated solutions. Fired. 10 Russian tanks destroyed in first 90 seconds of engagement. Before Russian crews understood they were under attack. Before Russian return fire achieved anything except revealing positions for follow-on Ukrainian strikes. The opening engagement set pattern for entire day. NATO technology defeating Russian equipment before Russian forces could respond effectively. Challenger 2 company advanced on northern flank. 18 British tanks providing fire support for Leopard exploitation. Their mission was suppressing Russian positions, allowing Leopards to advance rapidly. Challenger 2s engaged Russian bunkers with high explosive rounds, destroyed machine gun positions, eliminated anti-tank teams. The 120mm rifled guns were accurate, powerful, effective. Russian defenders facing Challenger 2s discovered their weapons couldn't penetrate British armor. Cornets failed, RPGs bounced off. Tank rounds achieved no penetrations. 4 Challenger 2s absorbed 15 anti-tank hits combined. All 4 continued fighting without casualties or significant damage. The invulnerability gave Ukrainian forces confidence to operate aggressively without fear of losses. What's your tactical assessment of this breakthrough operation? Type A for Ukrainian strategy using NATO armor, superiority for rapid exploitation. Type C for more methodical approach, prioritizing casualty minimization over speed. Comment your call. Abrams platoon exploited initial breach at 6:23 a.m. 26 American tanks drove through gaps Leopard 2s created. Their mission was deep penetration, threatening Russian rear areas, creating chaos. The Abrams advanced at 50 kilometers per hour on secondary roads, bypassed Russian strongpoints, drove toward logistics nodes identified through intelligence preparation, encountered Russian supply convoy at 7:14 a.m., destroyed 23 trucks and 3 fuel tankers with main gunfire, continued advancing. The Abrams deep operations were NATO doctrine being executed perfectly by Ukrainian crews who trained extensively on this exact mission profile. Subscribe now for complete operational analysis of Ukrainian breakthrough using NATO armor. This breakdown reveals tactical execution and strategic implications other sources won't cover comprehensively. Bradley fighting vehicles followed Leopard 2s carrying Ukrainian mechanized infantry. Each Bradley transported 6-man squad plus provided 25mm autocannon fire support. When Ukrainian armor encountered Russian infantry positions at 6:47 a.m., Bradley suppressed them with 200 rounds per minute, forced Russians into trenches. Ukrainian infantry dismounted, assaulted positions while Bradley guns kept Russian heads down, cleared 3 trench lines in 42 minutes, secured positions allowing armor to continue exploitation without worrying about bypass threats. The combined arms integration was textbook, precisely what Western training taught Ukrainian forces to execute. Mine-breaching operations cleared obstacles rapidly. M58 Miklik charges blasted 100-meter paths through Russian minefields. Leopard 2s with mine plows pushed aside remaining mines, created multiple lanes for following forces. What Russian commanders thought would delay Ukrainian advance for days was overcome in 23 minutes. The engineer support enabled momentum, prevented breakthrough from stalling at obstacles, made Russian fortifications tactical delays rather than operational stoppers. NATO equipment and training transformed mine warfare from Ukrainian vulnerability to merely another problem solved through superior technology and professional execution. Russian counterattack at 8:01 a.m. was poorly coordinated. 2 battalion tactical groups attempting to seal breach arrived separately, were defeated individually. First group encountered Ukrainian Leopard 2s in defensive positions, was destroyed at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters, lost 19 tanks and armored vehicles without reaching Ukrainian lines. Second group attacked Ukrainian positions held by Challenger 2s, achieved nothing except losing 14 vehicles to British tanks that couldn't be killed with available Russian weapons. The counterattacks failed completely, added to Russian losses without slowing Ukrainian breakthrough measurably. Air defense protected Ukrainian forces throughout operation. German Leopard systems moved with advancing armor, shot down 3 Russian Ka-52 helicopters attempting to engage Ukrainian tanks. American Avenger systems forced Russian Su-25 aircraft to remain beyond effective attack range. Ukrainian air defense umbrella denied Russian forces the close air support their doctrine required, made Russian aviation irrelevant to ground battle. NATO air defense systems proved decisive, enabling Ukrainian armor to operate without threat from above. Counter-battery warfare suppressed Russian artillery continuously. American AN/TPQ-50 radars detected Russian guns firing, calculated positions, transmitted coordinates to HIMARS launchers. Precision rockets destroyed Russian artillery before it could displace. 34 Russian guns eliminated during breakthrough operation. Remaining Russian artillery was ineffective, afraid to fire knowing detection meant destruction within minutes. Ukrainian forces advanced without significant indirect fire harassment. NATO counter-battery capability changed artillery warfare, fundamentally making Russian guns vulnerable while protecting Ukrainian positions. By noon, Ukrainian forces penetrated 14 kilometers beyond Russian front lines, created salient 8 kilometers wide, destroyed or disabled 86 Russian armored vehicles, captured 180 prisoners. Ukrainian losses were minimal. 4 Bradleys damaged, 2 recovered and repaired, 2 total losses, 0 tanks destroyed, 11 soldiers killed, 27 wounded. The casualty exchange ratio was overwhelming, 10 Russian casualties for every Ukrainian loss. Demonstrated NATO equipment superiority comprehensively when operated by well-trained determined forces. Exploitation phase began at 1 p.m. Ukrainian forces didn't consolidate, continued advancing, drove deeper into Russian rear areas. NATO doctrine emphasized exploitation after breakthrough before enemy could establish new defensive lines. Ukrainian commanders trained to that doctrine executed it aggressively. Leopard 2s advanced another 9 kilometers by 5 p.m. Total penetration reached 23 kilometers. Operational depth exceeding anything achieved previously in this sector created crisis for Russian operational command unable to contain Ukrainian mobile operations. Don't miss strategic implications and follow-on operations analysis. Subscribe and enable notifications for continuing breakthrough coverage. Russian logistics collapsed under Ukrainian pressure. Abrams tanks destroying supply convoys, HIMARS striking ammunition dumps, Ukrainian special forces ambushing fuel tankers. Russian units at front ran short of ammunition, ran out of fuel, lost communication, started withdrawing without orders. The logistics disruption was comprehensive, made Russian defensive operations unsustainable, forced withdrawals that accelerated Ukrainian advances beyond what direct combat produced. NATO maintenance support kept Ukrainian equipment operational despite intensive combat. German technicians repairing Leopard 2s rapidly. American teams servicing Abrams and Bradley systems. British support for Challenger 2s. Polish logistics assistance. The integrated maintenance enabled sustained operations. Vehicles damaged Saturday morning were repaired and returned to combat by evening. The sustainment was critical. Made breakthrough operations sustainable over multiple days, rather than one-day surge followed by equipment degradation. Intelligence fusion enabled Ukrainian success throughout operation. American satellites providing imagery, British SIGINT locating Russian headquarters, Polish human intelligence reporting Russian movements, Ukrainian tactical reconnaissance from drones, all integrated through NATO-compatible systems. Ukrainian commanders had comprehensive battlefield awareness. Russian counterparts lacked, could plan operations exploiting specific weaknesses, could avoid Russian strengths. Information advantage was as decisive as equipment advantages in determining outcomes. Morale impact was significant both sides. Ukrainian soldiers operating NATO equipment believed in their capabilities, trusted their armor, knew their training worked. Confidence showed in aggressive operations, willingness to exploit opportunities, initiative at small unit levels. Russian morale deteriorated watching positions overrun, watching equipment destroyed by weapons they couldn't match, hearing survivors describe NATO tanks they couldn't stop. Psychological dimension multiplied material advantages significantly. Regional allies noted breakthrough success. Poland increased own Leopard 2 procurement. Baltic states requested additional NATO deployments. Romania expanded military cooperation. The demonstration effect was powerful. NATO armor combined with proper training defeats Russian forces decisively. Strategic realignment accelerated through combat results rather than diplomatic negotiations. Training investment proved decisive throughout Saturday. Ukrainian crews trained 14 weeks on NATO equipment, learned every system thoroughly, practiced until procedures became automatic, conducted extensive live-fire exercises, built competence and confidence. Russian crews received minimal training, lacked institutional knowledge NATO programs developed. Skill gaps showed in every engagement, every decision, every outcome favoring Ukrainian forces consistently. This level of tactical analysis requires extensive military expertise. Support this channel with a like if this NATO tank breakthrough analysis provided real operational understanding comprehensively. Ammunition logistics sustained Ukrainian operations, tank rounds, artillery ammunition, anti-tank missiles. Everything arrived continuously through multiple supply routes. NATO production ramped up, stockpiles managed efficiently, supply chains worked, Ukrainian guns fired, tanks engaged, infantry carried modern weapons. NATO logistics functioned, enabling sustained operations Russian logistics couldn't match. Russian propaganda claimed tactical withdrawal to better positions, but evidence contradicted narrative. Abandoned equipment, destroyed vehicles, prisoners captured. Gap between Russian claims and battlefield reality was obvious. Russian public increasingly skeptical. Families demanded explanations. Political pressure mounted on leadership unable to explain defeats credibly. Russian propaganda claimed tactical withdrawal to better positions, but evidence contradicted narrative. Abandoned equipment, destroyed vehicles, prisoners captured. Gap between Russian claims and battlefield reality was obvious. Russian public increasingly skeptical. Families demanded explanations. Political pressure mounted on leadership unable to explain defeats credibly. Tactical innovations emerged during breakthrough. Ukrainian forces combined Leopard 2 speed with Challenger 2 armor protection creatively. Used Abrams for deep strikes while Leopards held gained ground. Integrated NATO and upgraded Soviet equipment effectively. Created hybrid capabilities neither system achieved alone. The tactical flexibility demonstrated professional military adaptation, taking Western doctrine, modifying for specific circumstances, finding solutions trainers never taught explicitly, beat Russian forces through innovation, compounding technological advantages systematically. Night operations extended breakthrough beyond daylight hours. NATO thermal sights allowed Ukrainian tanks to operate effectively after sunset. Russian forces lacking equivalent night vision capabilities couldn't respond. Ukrainian Leopard 2s continued advancing after dark, captured additional 6 kilometers by midnight. The 24-hour operations doubled effective tempo, denied Russian forces respite for reorganization, exhausted defenders faster than they could be relieved. Night capability was strategic advantage Russian forces couldn't counter with available equipment. Communications security prevented Russian intelligence collection. Ukrainian forces used encrypted NATO radios, secure satellite links, protected data networks, coordinated operations without Russian interception. Russian forces using unsecured communications broadcast their plans to Ukrainian intelligence. The communication security asymmetry was overwhelming, made Ukrainian planning effective, made Russian planning transparent, gave Ukrainian commanders advantages in every engagement where information mattered as much as firepower. Precision strikes supported mobile operations continuously. Storm Shadow missiles hitting Russian headquarters 200 kilometers behind lines. HIMARS destroying bridges Russian reinforcements needed. Artillery engaging targets identified through drone reconnaissance. The precision fires enabled by NATO systems changed operational dynamics, made Russian rear areas as dangerous as front lines, prevented effective response to Ukrainian breakthrough through systematic disruption of Russian command and logistics simultaneously. Medical evacuation saved Ukrainian lives throughout operation, wounded evacuated within minutes by dedicated vehicles, forward surgical teams providing advanced trauma care, rapid evacuation to field hospitals with modern facilities, Ukrainian soldiers knowing they would receive excellent care if wounded. Morale benefit was measurable, made soldiers willing to take calculated risks, Russian medical support inadequate by comparison, higher mortality from treatable wounds, lower morale from inadequate care. The medical care disparity compounded operational impacts beyond immediate casualty numbers. Command flexibility gave Ukrainian forces decision-making speed Russian centralization couldn't match. Ukrainian tank company commanders made independent decisions exploiting opportunities, didn't wait for orders from battalion, saw weakness, attacked it. NATO doctrine emphasizing initiative worked. Russian doctrine requiring approval for decisions created delays. Ukrainian forces adapted faster, exploited opportunities Russians responded to too slowly. The doctrinal difference accumulated small advantages into operational success. Fuel logistics supported sustained mobile operations. NATO fuel arriving continuously, distributed efficiently to advancing units. Abrams gas turbines consuming 3 gallons per mile supplied adequately. Leopard 2 diesels refueled regularly. Ukrainian armor never stopped for fuel shortages. Russian logistics struggled supplying forward units. Ukrainian interdiction disrupted Russian fuel supplies systematically. The logistics gap enabled Ukrainian mobility while constraining Russian maneuver. Weather conditions favored Ukrainian technology advantages. Clear Saturday weather maximized thermal sight superiority. Dry ground supported armor maneuver. Ukrainian forces planned operations around conditions favoring their equipment. Russian forces reactive to weather rather than exploiting it. The environmental awareness showed professional planning quality, making natural factors allies rather than neutral elements. Electronic warfare remained decisive in visible advantage. American jamming disrupted Russian communications. Russian units lost contact with higher headquarters, couldn't coordinate, couldn't request support, fought isolated. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces communicated effectively through NATO systems, coordinated operations, adapted to developments. The information systems gap was as important as weapon systems gaps. Ukrainian forces consolidated gains Saturday evening, prepared for continued Operation Sunday. Breakthrough was an end, was beginning, created operational opportunities subsequent phases would exploit. NATO doctrine emphasized sustained operations after breakthrough. Ukrainian forces trained to that doctrine implemented it effectively. Saturday's operation demonstrated sustained NATO support enables Ukrainian breakthrough operations succeeding against Russian forces. Equipment provided capability, training provided competence, logistics provided sustainability, intelligence provided awareness. Combined, they enabled operations breaking through Russian defenses decisively. 23 kilometers wasn't just ground, was proof that NATO backing makes Ukrainian offensive operations militarily viable. Not guaranteed, not easy, but possible when properly resourced and professionally executed. That's Saturday's lesson written in 23 kilometers of advance. 86 Russian vehicles destroyed, 180 prisoners captured, 11 Ukrainian soldiers killed, achieving what seemed impossible before NATO tanks proved otherwise through professional execution of Western doctrine by determined Ukrainian forces operating superior equipment effectively. What happens as Ukraine continues exploiting breakthrough? Can Russia stabilize defense? Comment your strategic assessment below. Your engagement shapes our coverage. Every comment, every like, every subscription, enable notifications. This breakthrough continues developing. More operations launching, more ground captured. This channel tracks every tactical development, every equipment performance metric, every strategic implication. Saturday proved NATO tanks enable Ukrainian success, changed operational possibilities. You understand exactly how and why. Subscribe now and miss nothing.